Welcome to the Arsenic Theory channel. Today I am continuing to read the book called The Next Million Years by Charles Galton Darwin. Today is chapter 4 called Material Conditions. The future of the human race, of course, must depend on the nature of the inorganic world in which it lives, so that it is well to begin by reviewing this. In the first place, all astronomical and geological evidence indicates that the climate of the Earth has been roughly constant for more than 1,000 million years, and there is every reason to think it will continue so for many million years to come. The general conclusion of the astronomical evidence is that it is very unlikely indeed that there should be a catastrophic end to the Earth in a million years, or any substantial change in its condition. So let me stop right here. I want to take the super cover off, since I no longer need to show that this is the next million years. And let me get a sip of my juice. So the thoughts that came to my mind is in regards to that the climate has stayed the same for 1,000 million years, has remained constant. During my study on weather modification and geoengineering questions, I had to also study the weather and how clouds form, what it actually takes to form a cloud, how particulates gather the water around it, water vapor, how they crystallize, and so forth. So one of the things I also had to study was global warming and the climate change in general, and kind of the anthropogenic side of it. Anthropogenic meaning, man-induced. So as you know, the scientific body believes that there is a global warming going on and that man is behind it. So one of the things I also uncovered, apparently scientists, even back in the early 20th century, were already talking about global warming and how this enormous burning of fossil fuels might be behind it. Coal plants were everywhere, in your house, to power the trains, to make the steam engines run on a ship, etc. So, but in any case, they were already talking about global warming in the early 20th century. And obviously that kind of mantra continued on through the entire 20th century up to, today. But now they don't really call it global warming. The scientific community has kind of stopped talking about that. It's still kind of lingering in a population at large. But the scientific community now talks about climate change, right? Not global warming anymore. There were ice ages before. There were local warming periods everywhere throughout the Earth. For example, Eric the Red, the first person that set his foot here in the United States, I believe in Newfoundland, if I'm not mistaken, back in 12th or 13th century, way before Columbus. But he was not able to explore North America at that time. Why? Because it experienced a mini ice age. Check it out. His name was Eric the Red, kind of the first person from Europe who discovered America. So if you look at the climate in a period of, like he says, 1,000 million years, it basically might stay the same. There were periods, local periods of warming and cooling, but on average, the median climate stayed the same. And he expects it to be the same too. So whatever warming we're experiencing now, it's going to turn into cooling in some other parts of the world, or maybe, warming again. So, but on average, the median will stay the same. Though the Earth's climate has been roughly constant for so long, there have been minor fluctuations in it. As is well known, it has recently been found that when there are heavy clouds which are nearly raining, they may be made to rain with the help of solid carbon dioxide powder. Obviously, what Charles Galton Darwin is talking about here is weather modification technologies. Already in his day, in 1950s, they had the know-how and ability to make rain in the conditions where the clouds were near instability. In other words, they were about to rain, but they just needed that extra trigger in order for it to, rain from the clouds. However, he's saying it's not going to be economically and politically feasible in order to implement it on a larger, countrywide scale. So the technology is out there, but it doesn't mean that there is some kind of body, that some kind of a sinister body of man is trying to use it in order to control the weather over the entire planet or even the continental US. All it says here is that, we do have the technology, we know how it works, we know how to trigger, the clouds to produce rain by, cloud seeding techniques. However, it doesn't mean they're using it, covertly over the entire nation. I'm sure they're testing it somewhere, like they've been testing, nuclear bombs everywhere. Did you know that, under the first calculations, when an atomic bomb was being researched, that the first calculation stated that the atmosphere will catch on fire when the nuclear bomb will detonate. So what happened? Nothing happened. Nothing was caught on fire. We are still alive, atmosphere is fine. Since the prospect of getting atomic power on a really large scale seems not very good, the direct use of sunlight would be one of the most effective ways of getting power. So this concludes chapter 4, called Material Conditions of the Next Million Years by Charles Galton Darwin. This actually last paragraph, the conclusion is very spot on of what he discussed in a whole chapter. It reminded me, it's kind of reminiscent of the movie Silent Green, for anybody that had seen it, or Logan's Run. So in a Silent Green, I believe Charlton Heston plays on it. So it's basically, all the cities are overcrowded, people basically living on top of each other. All the deceased people are shipped over to a factory and they're made into these Soylent crackers. So people are basically eating each other because there is shortage of food, cities are overcrowded, and they make, everybody who dies, they process them into this, green crackers, Soylent, called Soylent Green. So I'm kind of I hope this is not the scenario he's talking about, and new sources of food will be discovered based on the, advances in biochemistry. So, like I mentioned before in my previous, comments for previous chapters, perhaps there'll be, right now what they have is they can grow an entire steak, like a steak dinner, big, huge, red meat steak out of few cells, right? They can make vegetables now, that are genetically engineered, that can grow in colder climates. So the possibilities are out there. Actually, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are actually ready to invest somewhere, probably will be, a good place to invest into this biochemical companies. Thank you for listening. Let me know if you didn't like something. I know I changed the angle a little bit here, so I can get better sound with my fancy schmancy mic. Stay tuned on the Arsenic Theory channel.